Thank you for tuning in to the 5th episode of the Global Sport Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Michael Barilaro. Today we're going to be diving into some topics regarding some big moves made in the NRL in the last 48 hours. We're going to talk about some World Series baseball. We're going to talk about that wonderful performance from Via Sistina in the Cox Plate and many more. Here we go.
It goes fast like ocean waves. Anthems thrill the fluid veins. Choirs lift us high, then crash. Triumphant cries through sacred chains. Beneath the lights we conquer. Feel the dreams are ground of strife. Heroes born from sweat and grit. Forever chance through endless life. We are the raging hearts in stadiums, pulse alive. Under neon glare defiant, this fever we thrive. Cold wind, biting whispers, victory within our grasp.
Okay, guys, for our first topic today, we're going to start on a bit of horse racing. The Cox Plate was on last week. A quick little review on that. I'm still in shock at what I saw. Just an amazing performance. An amazing performance. A few things that I said on last week's episode, I was correct in saying this. It would be the quickest Cox Plate run of all time. 100%. I just thought Pride of Jenny would put so much pressure into the race. And that was reaffirmed. Via Sistina ran 2 minutes and 1 second, which actually breaks Winks' record. Doesn't mean it's a better horse than Winks. Everyone calm down. Track records don't mean that much, but it was pretty obvious the way Pride of Jenny and the racing map goes. It was always going to be the fastest run Cox Plate of all time. But seriously, 8 lengths? 8 lengths going away from them. James McDonald was up in the saddle 100 to go. Via Sistina was still moving away from prognosis. I mentioned last week that when it comes to picking Cox Plate horses, you look at the form, you look at the lineup, and you determine whether or not there is an out-and-out champion. If there's an out-and-out champion, you back it. You don't think, you just back it. If you can't see an out-and-out champion, the 3-year-olds carrying the light weights are the best bet. As a result, I backed broadsiding. That's how I announced it on air. And the big question mark was whether prognosis was just going to be too good. Now, as it turns out, broadsiding, a fantastic run. Jamie Carr, the jockey, said that it did a lot wrong in the race, showed a little bit of immaturity, but it finished like a train and was a very, very well-deserved third place. So it's a good bet by me. It's a good pick, and it was a great performance. Prognosis finished second. So that answered that question. Because we didn't have the form guide, was prognosis simply too good? Prognosis just got the inside running and was able to pip broadsiding at the post. However, 8 lengths in front was Via Sistina. Look, I didn't see it coming. Via Sistina, I did mention last week, is a really good horse. James McDonald is the best jockey in the world. You won't change my mind. But I didn't see that. I didn't see that coming. But it was a typical Cox Plate championship run where you take off from the 600 before you get to that first turn. So Moonee Valley has 2 turns. It turns at about the 400. It continues to turn almost like a full Yui, and it goes into the 200 straight. You've got to make your move on that backstretch on the 600. That's where Winks won all 4 Cox Plates. That's where, any champion really made their move. And that's where Via Sistina, trained by Chris Waller again, he now has the Winks template. One of the best wins I've ever seen in a Cox Plate. Now, is Via Sistina an absolute champion? I still don't know. I did mention that to win like that, you have to be a champion horse. But I don't know. Now, it is a 7-year-old. I don't know how much we're going to see of Via Sistina. Look, I would suspect it will come back in the autumn. It will probably run a campaign similar to Winks, where it will look to headline it with the Queen Elizabeth Stakes and try to win that. As an 8-year-old, you would have to assume Chris Waller will probably send it out into retirement if it were able to go through a strong campaign, finish with the Queen Elizabeth, and probably right off into the sunset. Now, Via Sistina, look, 19 starts. It's had 9 wins now. It's a very good horse. Is it a champion? Look, it's hard to tell, but that was a champion performance. I'm pretty sure we can all say that was a champion performance. Now, as this platform is starting to grow, I'm now starting to get some questions. I have a question here. I got an email from, it was hard to tell who the email is from because it's one of those funky emails that doesn't have the name. And look, unfortunately, they've left it anonymous. Guys, don't leave it anonymous. I'll give you a shout out online. You don't have to say anonymous. Anyway, this is from Anonymous, and The email reads, has the racing world gone mad, giving V Sistina 132 rating, putting her past champions like Makybe Diva and Sunline? Great win, but seriously, this is a gross overreaction, is it not? Are we just prisoner of the moment? I'm sure you will agree. Winx was 134 for Pete's sake, and she probably is the greatest horse ever. Can you make some sense of this? Okay. All right. Just before we get into that, there is no one in the history of horse racing, no analyst, no fan that is ever saying that Via Sistina is better than Makybe Diva or Sunline. That's ridiculous. They are two literally, you could almost put them in the top 5 immortal all time. I don't have them in my top 5, but they're right on the precipice of that top 5 of all time. No, Via Sistina getting 132 rating, you're referring to Timeform. A Timeform rating is not, and I want to put some clarity on this. I've had this question a few times in the last week. A few people have called me up and asked me, why is Via Sistina rated so highly? The run was rated so highly, not the horse. 132, that isn't a career rating based on how good you are over your entire 19 runs. For Via Sistina, it's 19 runs. Winx, 134 Timeform rating. That isn't a figure based on everything she's done with her 37 wins, 33 consecutive, 4 Cox plates, etc., etc., etc. What the Timeform rating is that was Winx's peak run, which was the second Cox plate. She actually ran it twice, I believe. I think she ran it in a second Cox plate, and I think she registered 134 Timeform rating on her second George Rider in the heavy 10, where she beat Le Romain by 11 lengths and beat Chautauqua by 15 lengths. I think she's registered 134 twice. It's not an indication of the greatness of the horse. So Via Sistina, yes, she does have a 132 Timeform rating now. It actually puts her top 20 of all time, which is quite incredible, but that's a testament to how incredible the run was. Now, some of the criteria in judging Timeform, track time does have an influence. Who you beat, what their Timeform ratings are, makes a difference. How big the margin was in victory. So, in other words, if Prognosis, look, I don't know what Prognosis's Timeform rating is, but it's run some really high quality Group 1s in Japan. It's come second to Romantic Warrior. That would have had a pretty high Timeform rating. So let's just say that Prognosis had maybe a 124 Timeform rating, which is, I would say that's probably about right. It's the reason why he's probably favourite for this race. Well, Via Sistina's gone out and beaten a horse with 124 rating by 8 lengths. That counts. When you throw in the fact that it also broke the race record at 2 minutes and 1 second, the all-time record. Let's think about the greats who have ever won this race. All the immortals. Winx, Farlap, Kingston Town, Might and Power. Yeah, these are the horses that have won this race. Makybe Diva, Sunline. And she's run a faster time than the lot. So, look, again, track times don't mean that much, but when you're trying to come up with a Timeform rating, it's all thrown into this mix. So, essentially, Timeform rating is like cooking a big recipe and everything goes into it and it spits out a meal. And depending on how good that meal is, that's the number you get. That's probably the easiest way to determine it. But no one is saying that Makybe Diva is not as good as Via Sistina. That would be a ridiculous statement to make. If anyone's making that statement, you really need to calm your horses. Just to verify my Timeform rating, here's the thing. Timeform rating, the highest rated horse of all time is Frankel. And Frankel probably is the greatest horse of all time. I've got my own opinions about that because it basically stayed at a mile, only ran 14 races, ran 2,000 once and then retired. I would love to have seen it go to the Arc de Triomphe in France. It never did. So if you look at it on face value, if you were to talk about the top 5 horses of all time, now in my eyes, Australian by the way, forget Frankel for a second. In my eyes, I think Winx is the greatest of all time. Now people will say Farlap, people will say Kingston Town. Look, it doesn't matter. It's objective, right? That's my opinion, right? If you were to convince me that Winx is not the greatest of all time, you're going to have to convince me that any of the ones that you're going to put in front of it could have won 33 consecutive races, undefeated for 4.5 years, 25 at Group 1 level, 4 Cox Plates, 3 Queen Elizabeths, 4 George Riders, 4 Chipping Nortons, a Doncaster at the weights. That you would have to convince me that a horse could have achieved all that. And then if you can convince me that was the case, then you can say that horse is better than Winx. It's a pretty good argument. Good luck with that. But I've got Winx number 1. Here's the thing. My 5 horses in my top 5, the other 4 actually register higher on Timeform rating. So my other 4 in my top 5 of all time in Australian thoroughbred history, Farlap has to go in there. I had never saw Farlap run. I never saw Kingston Town run, but those 2 have to go in there. They just have to. The other one is Black Caviar, 25 wins, 25 races. It was a beast, probably the quickest horse of all time. And the other one is just my personal favourite. You can have an objective view about this. My personal favourite is Might and Power. Yeah, Might and Power won the Melbourne Cup, the Caulfield Cup, the Cox Plate, won a Caulfield Cup in a way that you've never seen before. And I just have a feeling that it's that one horse that if it decided on its day it was just going to win, you couldn't beat it. It would lead and then you just couldn't go past it. So Might and Power, a bit more of a personal one. Other people will have Mackay Diva, and I've got no problem with that. I think Might and Power, had it not broken down, would have been one of the absolute elites. I got no doubt it would have gone to the Japan Cup and it would have smoked them. And then we would have been talking about it being one of the greatest. But on face value, in terms of peak performance, Might and Power, I think could have beaten anyone. Now, all these horses, well, actually, I think Might and Power's got 133 Timeform rating. So Might and Power might be a little bit under Winx. But other horses you would put in that category, like Tulloch and Burnborough, they've all got a higher Timeform rating than Winx. So it doesn't mean that they're better than Winx, but you have to. Another thing that Timeform takes into account is the sex of the horse. So Winx, running majority at weight for age, always gets that 2 kilo discount. Whereas you look at someone like Black Caviar. So Black Caviar, female horse, has a 136 peak Timeform rating. Now, if you look at the race where she obtained this rating, she's had some great victories, but her Newmarket victory in Flemington in 2011, or 2010, or 2011, 2011, I believe. Her Newmarket victory, that is what got her rating. Now, if you look at the horses she beat in that race, it probably wasn't one of the best lineups. You know, Crystal Lily was probably the next highest rated horse. I believe Beated was in the race. They're probably not the best horses she's ever beaten when you consider Buffering and Haylist and, you know, Sea Siren and others. You can go on and on and on. Rain Affair, whatever. But on that day, she was only a 4-year-old filly. She had to carry 58 kilos. Weight makes a big difference in Timeform. 58 kilos as a 4-year-old mare. She wins by 4.5 lengths, written down with 100 to go, and she breaks the race record. That gives you a massive Timeform rating. It gave her the number one, the Longines number one racehorse in the world on that occasion. So that's how Timeform works. It's not really an indication of how good the horse is. Another interesting thing is when you look at the time of the Cox Plate that Via Sistina ran. It's really interesting because when they put out a headline, it smashes Winx's record. The first thing that comes to mind is that Via Sistina ran a faster time than Winx when Winx beat Hartnell and the rest by 8 lengths plus. Yeah, by 4 seconds. It smashed Winx's time that day. This is why race records don't really mean much, because that was Winx's best ever performance. That's a performance where you can give me any horse over 2,000 metres at any point in history, Frankel included, and I think Winx wins that race. That's how good that performance is. It would beat Via Sistina. But Via Sistina's time was 4 seconds faster. But that's because the racing map, the speed, was a lot more than what was, you know, that 2000, and this is where it's actually really ironic. The 2016 Cox Plate that Winx won, she won 4 in a row. The best win was actually her slowest. And it was her slowest by a long, long way. She ran 2 minutes and 6 seconds. The other 3 were much quicker, but that was by far her best performance. You see what I'm trying to say? So if you look at it, and this is where it's also very ironic, the race record that Winx set. Now, if you look at the 4 Cox Plates objectively, everyone will look at it and say I wouldn't say the poorest. When you win a Cox Plate, there's no poor performance, but the less convincing win of the 4 Cox Plates would be her third one, because she only won by half a length over Humidor, and it was the only one where a horse was actually attacking her on the line, trying to go past her. So you would look at that and say that's probably the most unconvincing of the 4 Cox Plates. That was the race record. It wasn't her second one where she won by 8 lengths. It wasn't the first one where she won by 5 lengths, and it wasn't the last one where she beat Ben Battle by 3.5. It was the one where Humidor almost got her on the post. That was the one that set the race record. So, look, and that was her lowest Timeform rating out of the 4. So track times, people make a big deal about it. Some people have tried to say Via Sistina's run was better than Winx because of the track record. It doesn't really mean any different. There are some races in the history of horse racing where you can say the track record and the race record is just astonishing. And then you go back to Secretariat, Belmont Stakes, 2 minutes 24 over the 2,400 metres. It still hasn't been broken. It was 1973. No one has gone past it. I mean, it was an extraordinary performance. Now, if you want to talk Timeform and you want to talk the greatest performance ever, well, that one was the greatest performance ever. So the Belmont Stakes where Secretariat won by 31 lengths. Guys, 31 lengths. He almost won by the length of the straight. Now, people talk, well, who else is in the race? But when you're running 2 minutes 24 and winning by 31 lengths, it doesn't really matter who was in the race. You're winning that against any horse in any era at that distance. He led it from start to finish, absolutely dominated, and they didn't have Timeform back then in America, but they've done an analysis of the race, and they've said that Timeform rating would have been somewhere around about 151 to 153. No horse has ever hit 150. So by those kind of analytics, you would have to say that Secretariat's performance in the Belmont Stakes in 1973 was the greatest performance ever on a racetrack. Hard to argue. Hit me up at mike@globalsportfanatics.com or any of my socials. Tell me what you think of Via Sistina's race, and tell me what you think or who you think is the greatest horse of all time, or who are the top 5 Australian race horses of all time. That's the horse racing for today. I'm going to talk about the Melbourne Cup on a separate segment closer to Tuesday. There's just so much that hasn't been released at the moment. I don't have the form. I don't have the official numbers. I don't have the barrier draw yet. So calling or putting any commentary on the Melbourne Cup, what I'll probably do is a quick little phone thing separately around about Sunday or Monday, and I might release that with my tips, and we'll see how we go with the Melbourne Cup. I hope you enjoyed the Cox Plate. It was an amazing event. I love seeing Cox Plates like that. That is a historic win. It doesn't change my mind who the best horses of all time. There is one more question here regarding horse racing from a Pat. Question, the Everest is done for another year. Why don't Japanese or English horses, Hong Kong sprinters come to Sydney for the race? I'm sure Japanese have some awesome sprinters. Japanese horses, particularly Hong Kong sprinters, they're phenomenal. But the Everest is done by slots. That's the reason, basically, right? So you've got a slot, and it might not be your horse that you normally run, but you have a slot. So this year, for instance, Tab decided to put Bella Nipotina into their spot, and they run. So I just don't think we've got to a point yet where Japanese horses or Japanese trainers are willing to give their horses to the slot holders of Everests for a campaign to go run this Everest. Do you know what I mean? I think they would probably join the race if they were their own slot holders. But at the moment, the Everest is a bit of a unique concept. It's now got Group 1 status. So in terms of the slot holders, it might need some tweaking. I'm not too sure. But over time, I think that probably answers your question. Whether they open up like 3 or 4 international slot positions for British horses or Japanese horses or Hong Kong horses. It's something, look, Peter V'landys will figure this out. He's one of the best administrators in the world in any sport. He'll figure this out. But at the moment, the Everest is kicking all sorts of goals. It gets sold out within minutes every single year. This year was a great addition to the race. Bella Nipotina was awesome. There's a few other horses, like Jollistar. Jollistar is one to watch. I'm not going to go into the Golden Eagle too much. I'm not that interested in the Golden Eagle, to be fair, in a Melbourne Cup week. But Jollistar finished the Everest like an absolute train. Maybe have a few dollars on Jollistar to do something in the Golden Eagle. $10 million race. Good luck to it. That's my horse racing for now, guys. On to the next topic. Okay, on to Rugby League. A quick recap of last week's internationals. Look, to be fair, I didn't find much interest in any of these games. Kangaroos 22, Kiwis 10. Kiwis have got a plethora of players out, so look, they did pretty well. Just wasn't that entertaining a game, to be fair. Zach Lomax had some really good moments in the game. There was a really interesting try to Lindsay Collins. I'm not sure what the fullback was doing up in the line, but I saw some calls throughout the week. I don't know if my podcast is actually getting any traction or a coincidence, but apparently the NRL have announced the return of the Ashes. If you've been following my content and you saw my episode regarding International Rugby League calendar, that was definitely one thing I called for. Hopefully the Six Nations, if they are listening to my content, I don't think they are, but they are. I know for a fact there are a few people that are in the media that I do know that are listening and that are involved in Rugby League. Maybe they've had a quiet word. I'm not too sure, but look, either way, whether it's my idea or anyone else's, it's great if the Ashes are returned. But I would love to see this Six Nations concept brought in. So fingers crossed. If they are listening to my concept and they are analysing that would be awesome. More pressing matters in Rugby League. There's been some huge moves over the last 24, 48 hours. Surprising moves. I don't know if I'm surprised by the moves, but I guess hearing it officially announced has confused me somewhat. Ben Hunt has parted ways with the Dragons, effective immediately. As soon as that happened, I messaged everyone. I said, Clint Gutherson will be announced to the Dragons in the next few hours. And it's exactly what's happened. Look, I don't know if it's been an official announcement, but when they come out and they say that he's been given his release and he expects to announce a 3-year contract at the Dragons any day now, it's pretty much done. Now, in terms of what Parramatta's doing, anyone who knows me knows I have a lot of issues with the board. This is I'm struggling with this news. As a Parramatta supporter, I don't understand what they're doing. Jason Riles, I understand he wants to have some autonomy over the club. Mark O'Neill, look, he's been a GM for a long time, but I do know that Clint Gutherson has been their most loyal servant for a long time, and he's the captain. I understand you want to clear the cap up. Your financials are one thing. If Clint Gutherson's on $900,000, you might save that cap space. But what else goes out the window when you lose Clint Gutherson? Forget the $900,000 for a moment. You clear that up, but 8 years, probably Parramatta's best player. He's the captain, leadership intangibles, leads the club in every statistical category when it comes to fitness and work ethic. His defensive abilities, his ability under the high ball, how to structure a defense, knowing where everyone needs to be. Look at our record without Clint Gutherson over the last few years. It's deplorable. His ability to pass left, his ability to pass right, his ability to play up the middle. That all goes out as well. You wanted to talk about filling in the salary, okay. But all of that also needs to be replaced. That's why when clubs make moves just based on salary alone, here's the thing with Parramatta. They've got Isaiah Iyongi coming in. He's played one first-grade game. Jason Riles, having never coached a first-grade game, having never even had 1 day of preseason, has put Isaiah Iyongi and said, you're going to be the fullback. And said to Clint, he's taken your spot, we'll find somewhere else for you. The writing was on the wall then. Was Clint Gutherson seriously going to hang around knowing that a one-game first grader was going to take his job? Come on. Writing was on the wall. He was going to play as a 13. He was going to come on the field off the bench and... What is this? Clint Gutherson is a fullback. And that's the disappointing part for me is Clint Gutherson, if you're watching last year, he certainly wasn't the problem at Parramatta. He was by far our best player. The second best player was Regan Campbell-Gillard. He's gone too. But Clint Gutherson was not the problem at Parramatta. And I just don't know what kind of effect that's going to have on the junior base there. The players, how they think, how he leads by example at preseason training, all the stuff that goes with Clint Gutherson, that all goes out the window. I just would have thought did you actually want to have at least 1 day of preseason before we started getting rid of our two best players? It's a huge call. It is a huge call. Jason Riles, look, I wish him all the best. I want him to have every success. I just wonder what the agenda behind the call was. Is this, Clint Gutherson and Regan Campbell-Gillard were noted supporters of Brad Arthur. They weren't happy with what happened to him. Is that the reason? Just trying to clean out any support for a former coach. If the club supports you, it supports you. If Clint Gutherson supports Brad Arthur, well, of course he does. It was his coach. Regan Campbell-Gillard, it's his coach. I mean, I don't understand the need to get rid of your two best players. And by the way, your other best player, Mitchell Moses, what's he think about all this? He's got a player option. He can leave next year. 5 years, that's rubbish. He can leave. It's a huge call. Now, Ben Hunt, a little bit different. Ben Hunt, you can argue whether or not it's been a successful acquisition. He's been there for a long time, and he's 35 years old. Whereas going back to Clint Gutherson's still only 29. I think he's still got some good football. I think the Dragons will come out of this better. I think Dragons, if they get rid of Ben Hunt, who they put in the halves now, if Clint Gutherson's at the club, I think they're better off. Now, I heard Aaron Woods come out saying that the money for Clint Gutherson was already available. So that could have happened anyway, regardless of the Ben Hunt trade. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but if that is the case, if they were in a position to sign Clint Gutherson, and they have now opened up a huge amount of their cap by offloading Ben Hunt, the Dragons, they are in a very good position. Very good position. It'll be interesting to find out who's on the other end of that precipice, because I thought it was going to be like for like. My opinion was Ben Hunt leaves, that's the cap opened up. Clint Gutherson, there's your opportunity, in you go. But if Aaron Woods is correct, and I'm sure Aaron Woods has got really good intel, I wonder who's next for the Dragons. Very, very interesting. Look, I don't know what your thoughts are. Hit me up at michaelglobalsportsfanatics.com or hit me up on any of my socials. I don't think Clint Gutherson did anything wrong. Ben Hunt, look, the writing on the wall for Ben Hunt was there a few years ago. He'd asked for a release, so I don't think it's a bad thing what the Dragons are doing. I'm a lot more confused by what Parramatta's doing. But the Dragons, I think they've made the right call. If I'm a Dragon supporter, I'm looking pretty confident with the future. I really am. They've moved their CEO on and all that kind of stuff. I think the Dragons are in a good spot. I don't know about the Parramatta Eels. I think they could be in a real spot of bother. Obviously, I'm going to critique them harder because they're my club, but I have a feeling that they haven't fallen off a cliff in the last 8 or 9 years. It could happen. It really could. I hope Jason Rolls is the best, but I wish him the best, but he's never coached before. And these are huge calls to make, having never coached a game. And the board that continues to allow him to sign off on these things, well, they don't have any football acumen at all. They don't know anything about the game. That's why they just give autonomy, and that's why we lose players like Reid Marnie when there are agendas behind that, and we lose players like Blaise Talangi when we offer him more money and he goes away, and we have no control over our elite pathways. I have a topic on this I'm going to release in a separate episode. I'm going to talk about the Parramatta board. As a lot of people know, I am running a campaign against them, and I want to see that come to fruition. But until that happens, I think we're all in a little bit of spot of bother. But Parramatta, there's a lot of huge calls to make. I don't like what I'm seeing. Proof is going to be in the pudding. It's a big call. You get rid of Clint Gutherson. You get rid of Reed Campbell-Gillard. You don't know you don't know what Dylan Brown's thinking. He's got a player option to get out. You don't know what Mitchell Moses is thinking. He's got a player option to get out. Players that would have replaced him, Ethan Sanders, he's gone. Blaise Talangi, he's gone. We could have none of them in 12 months and a rookie coach, and we don't know how good he's going to go. Some huge decisions have been made by Parramatta. I think they're a little bit irresponsible. I think someone needs to rein in what's happening to this. And guys, can we just pump the brakes? Pump the brakes a little bit. Let's just get to the preseason. Let's get some months under our belt. Let's form some chemistry, and then we can attack the 2025 season. These are some huge moves to explain if it goes belly up. That's all I'm going to say. We've got some questions here from another fan. Oh, Patrick again. So Patrick Rossitano. There you go. He's having another question regarding Rugby League now. Patrick. Okay, so Patrick is a Bulldog supporter. What has he written here? Where do you see the Bulldogs finishing next year? How long do you think until we can be talking about them winning the competition? Is Ben Hunt available? Look, I don't know what's happening with Ben Hunt. I don't know if that's what the Bulldogs are thinking. My opinion, the Bulldogs are a halfback away from being a serious contender. Now, they would want to be a little bit careful. There is a potential for 2025 to regress. And I say that with all due respect because no one expected much out of the Bulldogs in 2024. But now that they're on everyone's radar, and they should be, because they were excellent last year. The Josh Addo-Carr incident didn't help at the end of the year, and they did fall off the cliff a little bit towards the end. But I think their finals performance against Manly was admirable at best. And I think going to have Sitili Tupanua that goes into the back row. That's a bit of a... Look, Sitili Tupanua is a fantastic player. I just question whether the Bulldogs actually needed to prop up their back row. Their back row is sensational at full strength. Once Kurt Mann comes back, you've got Josh Curran as an option. You've got Jake Preston. You've got Viliami Kikau. To me, Sitili Tupanua obviously fits into that category in some way, but it means someone's going to give way, and they've got some pretty good players. I'm not sure whether that's where the Bulldogs needed to centralise their recruitment. They've got some issues in the front row. Whether one of those can develop into a front row, I'm not too sure. I think Sam Hughes has done a wonderful job. Parramatta Junior, let him go again. Well done, board. But I think if Sitili Tupanua, if they're thinking about him being the front row, I don't think that's a good idea. He's a real hard-running back rower, but he does play on the same side of the field as Jake Preston, who does run great lines on that right-hand edge. So I'm not really sure what they're thinking, whether they believe that someone like a Josh Curran can step up into the front row and play in the middle. They want to look at their halfback and they want to look at their front row. They haven't really answered too many of those questions in the off-season. So with the expectation... The Bulldogs could regress for 2025, but I don't think they're in a bad situation. I think the Bulldogs in the next 3 years will contend. Now, the issue I have with some of the moves Parramatta is making is, forget Ben Hunt for a moment. If things are going to start to go belly up this year with Parramatta, Mitchell Moses has a get-out clause in his contract. He can walk. And I think Phil Gould will get straight in there and go bang. Now, if they get Mitchell Moses at halfback, 2026, now you're talking about Bulldogs maybe winning the competition. Legitimately maybe winning the competition. That's how I feel about the Dogs. I don't know about 2025, but I think they're in good stead at the moment. Can they win the competition in 2025? I don't think so. Could they get Mitchell Moses in for 2026? Ben Hunt, look, it might be an option. I think Ben Hunt will go back to Queensland. My opinion, I think Ben Hunt will go back to Queensland. He's 35. This will be Ben Hunt's last contract. I think he would like to do it with his family and friends back home. So I don't think he's going to go to the Bulldogs. I don't think he's going to go from the Dragons to the Bulldogs, even though it means that if they were to get Ben Hunt this year, they would have a serious chance at least making the top 4, probably getting to a prelim. They might get to a grand final. Can they win it? I'm not too sure. I still got 2 or 3 ahead of the Bulldogs for next year. But my biggest concern is Mitchell Moses. Now, there's about 4 clubs I'm concerned about. The Parramatta hierarchy have allowed this to happen. They've exposed our cap and they've exposed our squad and our position where Mitchell Moses has some legitimate teams who he could go there and they could instantly become a premiership contender or instantly win the premiership. And we're talking big. We're talking with, you look at Adam Reynolds and Ezra Mam, he could go to the Broncos. You're looking at, imagine Mitchell Moses there with Reece Walsh. What if the Broncos make a play for both him and Dylan Brown? What? The Broncos will win the competition. They will win it 100% in 2026 if that was to happen. The Roosters, they've limped in with a Chad Townsend. Surely Nick Politis doesn't think Chad Townsend's the answer to Luke Keary long term, but they can get a year out of him. Are they going to be in the market? Don't worry about the Isaac Moses issue with Mitchell Moses. There's always ways around it. Is he a legitimate contender to go to the Roosters? The Bulldogs are another one. I just mentioned the Bulldogs. There's some serious clubs out there that will be actively looking to get someone like Mitch Moses, and Parramatta have exposed themselves and they've got no say. If he chooses to go, if this doesn't pan out, if this gamble with Regan Campbell-Gillard, getting rid of the captain, getting rid of Clint Gutherson, replacing him with pretty much nothing, Jack Williams and Iyongi, if this doesn't work out and Jason Ryles becomes another Stephen Kearney, Mitchell Moses, I guarantee he's going to go. He will go, 100%. Now, if I'm the Bulldogs, I'm looking very, very closely at that. And if they were able to get Mitchell Moses, I've got no doubt the Bulldogs 2026 will go very close, if not win the premiership. So I hope it answers that question. Second question here. Do you see Penrith dropping off next year, or will they still be serious contenders after losing Fisher, Harris and Luai? They are the premiership favourites. I think they will win 5 in a row. Does that answer your question? Look, who they put in the front row, I think Isaiah Papali'i, they'll just plug in and play. Isaiah Papali'i is a very good player, but he just needs to be pushed. He just needs to be pushed. And I just think at the Tigers, he's regressed. He was very good at Parramatta, but going into a poorer program, I think his performance has regressed as a result. And I think if he goes to the Panthers, he's going to have to up his game. And I think putting him in the front row, right in the middle there with Moses Leota, who will set a standard. I think Moses Leota is every bit as good and every bit as important as James Fisher-Harris. Not a lot of people talk about him, but I think he is a phenomenal front rower. And if he's there and sets that example for Isaiah Papali'i, I think Papali'i can be a really, really dangerous acquisition for the Panthers. So he goes to the front row. What they do at 5'8", look, there's been talk about Blaise Talangi. I don't think Blaise Talangi left Parramatta simply because Luai's leaving for the Tigers. I don't think that's the case. I think he left because he had no faith in the administration and didn't want to commit to them long time. He was already dirty on him when the original negotiations broken down prior to Brad Arthur being sacked, right? So Blaise Talangi, I don't think that's the reason why he left, but I know that he left for less money. Parramatta offered him more to stay, he left for less. That's the first time I've ever known in history that a junior's ever done that. Anyway, neither here nor there. Blaise Talangi, could he be the 5'8"? Ivan Cleary will teach him well. He's got the best player in the world, not the best halfback, the best player in the world, Nathan Cleary. They've got a history of plugging and playing and just continuing on with their dominance. I think the Penrith Panthers will still be a contender. So yeah, look, I hope that answers your question regarding Penrith. I don't think they're going to drop off. I think they're the favourites to win a 5th straight title, and it's up to everyone else to beat them. Will they come back to the pack? Well, they probably should. Maybe the loss of Luai, Fisher Harris, and Suni Turuva, maybe that is the final curtain call. Maybe that's just too much for the Panthers to overhaul. I guess we'll see. Proof is in the pudding. But from what I saw last year in the grand final, Nathan Cleary is getting better and better and better. So these players, as they drop off, Nathan Cleary is just becoming a better player. He's 26 years old. He's not going to regress. So I think they've got another one in them. They might have, and if they win this one, the exodus of the Penrith Panthers is nowhere near as severe as it has been this year. They might win at 6, 7, and 8 straight. I don't really know. Maybe that's going crazy, but Phil Gould called this. He said they win 6 or 7 in a row. They're up to 4. So the answer to your question, I don't see Penrith dropping off. I think they're still going to win the comp next year. I hope I've answered your question regarding the Panthers and regarding the Bulldogs. On to the next topic. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about some baseball because as I'm doing this podcast, I am watching Game 5. This is becoming an extraordinary event. I don't have the volume up because I'm obviously filming, But what on earth is going on with the baseball? So this World Series started with an absolute bang. The Yankees were superb in Game 1. And Freddie Freeman steps up in the bottom of the ninth and just grand slams Los Angeles to the first win. It was, if you didn't see it, just go to YouTube, type in Game 1 highlights. Everyone thought the Yankees were home. Yankees played so well. And Freeman just steps up and just, bases loaded, bang, see you later. Unbelievable. One shot, bottom of the ninth, it's over. The crowd went absolutely ballistic. It was such a subdued crowd. They thought they were 100% going down 1-0 in the series. By the way, the Dodgers had 2 outs. They had 2 outs when Freeman stepped up to the plate. Yes, they had loaded bases, but they were 2 outs. One more out, gone. 1-0 Yankees. Incredible. And then the most bizarre thing happened. You watch that game and you think, okay, Dodgers, well done, got out of jail. But Yankees are going to come back hard. And they just didn't. The Yankees, the next 2 games, just subdued. I don't know what happened. It was almost like Freeman didn't just win Game 1. He's literally taken the World Series out of the Yankees' hands. I don't know what happened. The Yankees did nothing. Then Game 4 started yesterday. And I'm thinking, they've got to do something here, the Yankees. And they didn't. It was bizarre. The Dodgers just came out and they just went bang, bang, bang. All of a sudden, it's 2-0. And you're thinking, the Yankees are done. This is going to be a sweep. Now, I announced last week I wanted to see the Dodgers win, but I said, no way, it's a sweep. I'm sure we'll be looking at around about Game 5, which we are, now that this podcast is going. But I thought, oh my goodness, my next episode, I'm going to be talking about a sweep. Now, I'm going for the Dodgers, but I didn't want to see a sweep, and it was getting a little bit boring to watch. I had some notes. I was taking some notes for this podcast going, this World Series, which was going to be the ultimate World Series, has now become the ultimate fizzer. They were my notes. I've actually got them here. I'd never changed them. Ultimate fizzer. It's just incredible. The legendary World Series has become the legendary fizzer. Sweep. And how much of an impact did Freeman's Grand Slam walk-off in the ninth of Game 1 have on the Yankees? How different the series could have been. They were my notes, and then Volpe steps up. And then he hits his own Grand Slam, puts the Yankees back in front in Game 4, and you're thinking, oh my goodness. And the Yankees, all of a sudden, they just switch into gear. The Yankees from Game 1, before the Freeman Grand Slam, were back. They were back. And all of a sudden, they went on to win 11-4. They were just crushing the Dodgers. And you're watching it going, oh, hang on a second. They go another game here. They get it to 3-2. They go back to Dodger Stadium. Dodgers have to win then. They've got to win it in Game 6 because if it goes to 3-3, anything can happen in Game 7. We've seen that before. Netflix have released a series regarding what the Boston Red Sox did to the Yankees back in 2004. Is this just some sort of a premonition? I don't know. But then we get to Game 5. Now, while I was doing my horse racing breakdown, I'm watching going, I'm about to announce Yankees are sending this back to LA. This is going 3-2. Yankees up 5-0. This is over. It's 5-all. I can't believe it. It is currently 5-all at the bottom of the 5th. The Dodgers win this, World Series is over. Yankees win this, we're going back to LA. It's 5-all, bottom of the 5th. I don't know anymore. This has been the best postseason ever. I don't remember a postseason with so many twists and turns. And these two great franchises, they are finally putting on a show. It is no longer a fizzer. It's now a classic. And you know what? I want the Dodgers to win this series, but part of me just hopes the Yankees win this game. I would love to see a Game 6. I don't want the series to end. I don't want the season to end right now because it's been tremendous. Look, I won't go too much into the baseball. As I go on with these episodes, with this content over the next hour, there's a good chance this could be finished. So I'll keep updating you as we go. But at the moment, a terrific World Series is unfolding. 5-all, the bottom of the 5th. World Series is cranking. Look, I will keep you up to date. That's my baseball. I'm going to leave it there. We're going to move on to the next topic before I go absolutely berserk before something else happens. Next one. Okay, guys, just a quick recap of the UFC from last Sunday. I hope you guys watched it. The Ilia Topuria and Holloway fight, we'll start with that one first because the other one's a little bit painful to discuss. But Ilia Topuria, still undefeated. I keep saying, how often do you hear me saying cinder blocks for hands? My goodness, can he hit? At 145, his left hand is just devastating. Max Holloway, really good effort. Really good effort. He obviously had a big height advantage and a reach advantage. He kept him tight. He put some nice combinations together in the second. He was taken down in the first. But Ilya Topuria, he's a really scary animal. He's a really scary animal. He's got brilliant stand-up technique. He hits with power. The punch that won the fight, Max Holloway didn't even see it coming. He just placed his left foot and just rotated his shoulder, bang, straight on his chin. Didn't even see it coming. And it was as clean a shot as you'll ever see. You know, the last two wins, Max Holloway and Volkanovski, that's not easy. And he has knocked him out clean as a whistle. Now, Volkanovski, credit to Volk, he was in the crowd and he was cheering. You saw him after the fight going, he was just saying, wow. Like, he was like, wow, that was incredible. Volk, please don't take this guy on again. Like, I love you. You're a warrior. The Australian public loves you. This is not worth it. Don't worry about Ilya Topuria. First of all, you got to fire up and wait to get to him. Don't worry about Ilya Topuria. Just let him do what he has to do. Okay? I'm not saying run from him, but like, credit where it's due. You've already been in the ring with him. He's knocked your ass out. Don't go near that animal. This guy has remarkable boxing skills. He's one of the only UFC fighters that I really believe you put him in a boxing ring, he could do some damage. He doesn't lean back. He uses his footwork to go back on defense. Max Holloway did get in with a few shots. I'm not saying he didn't. It didn't look to phase him, though. He just kept coming forward. Incredible fighter. Ilya Topuria, who's now, 16-0? I haven't even looked. Anyway, I think it's about 16-0. It's a long shot seeing anyone to beating him in that division. At 145, I can't see anyone beating him. I've never seen anyone with that much power at 145, and his technique is just impeccable. Max Holloway, he hasn't gone away. I would like to see him fight again. I don't think he was disgraced at all. But Ilya Topuria, next level. He is one of the absolute superstars of the UFC. Is he the superstar of the UFC at the moment? Him, Pereira, Duplessis, they're the three. Anytime there's a fight card with those three, main event, I'm not even going to second guess myself. I'm cancelling plans. Don't die. I ain't going to your funeral. I'm telling you, not if those three are fighting. Now, the other fight. Look, Robbie Whittaker. He's, we all love Robbie. He's just not. We'll never see him top the mountain again. He's just never. There's just too many good fighters. I've got to give credit where it's due, though. Chimaev, he's just really. He is at another level to anything I've ever seen. I mean, I'm just trying to put it in words what I saw. But round one, he just took him to the ground straight away. And I said on last week's podcast, the one thing Robert Whittaker couldn't afford was to get on the ground. He just had to use his legs, kick the shins. But Chimaev, he's a really good stand-up fighter too. He's not just a wrestler. He can hit, and he can hit with power. So he doesn't just have to take you down by trying to wrestle you. He can actually put you down. Now, obviously, with Rob Whittaker, he wrestled him to the ground. And when he got to the ground, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's still 3 minutes in this round. I'm not sure Rob Whittaker's getting out of this. And, 30 seconds later, fight was over. I mean, Rob Whittaker, I feel for him. That's a terrible way to lose a fight. You saw the fear in his eyes. He could not breathe. He could not breathe. His eyes just popped open, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about it because I don't like to see that. I don't like to see a fighter under that kind of duress. Rob Whittaker's fantastic. He's had a great career, but you're never going to see Rob Whittaker at the top of the mountain. Not as long as you've got your fighters like Chimaev there. They're just too good. Duplessis, they're just too good. Okay, Robbie, keep doing what you're doing. If you're happy to go into the ring, I just hope you can make as much money as you can. But start to look after yourself now. It's at a point now where you're never going to be champion anymore. You're never going to be able to take on these guys. You're never going to win. So just look after yourself a little bit, champ, because it's not worth losing your marbles over. We don't want a punch drunk Robbie Whittaker for the rest of our lives. I think he's got a lot more he can offer the sport. I think he would be a tremendous manager, a tremendous cornerman, a tremendous trainer. I think he could be an inspiration for fighters coming through and training them. You don't need to continue making your living by taking on fighters like Chimaev. You did it. You made your point. You were well off the pace. You don't need to go there anymore. Duplessis, forget it. Don't worry about Alex Pereira. You're never going to go up to that division anyway. But Duplessis, Chimaev, you're outclassed. You're outclassed. Chimaev and Duplessis, is that a fight that can happen now? That would be an incredible fight. This Chimaev, he is legitimate. He is absolutely legit. He might not be the best, fighter to watch. I'm not a huge fan of submissive fighters. I'm not a big wrestling fan, but it is what it is. He gets you on the ground. You're not getting up, and he can hit. Robbie, take care of yourself. Chimaev, excellent performance. Well done. You've certainly piqued my attention. Anytime you're on a card, I am going to watch it now. Tapuria 100% though, the highlight of the card. Next topic.
Cold wind, biting whispers, victory within our grasp.
We're going to go to the NFL. I skipped the NFL last week. I ran out of time on the content. I was going to discuss some soccer today, but we're running out of time again. So we're going to finish up with the NFL today. So going over last week's results, the Rams, look, Pakua's back. Next thing I know, the Rams looking good again. So they actually had a really good win over the Vikings. It was at home, but 30 points to 20, a bit of a shock loss to the Vikings, who now moved to 5-2. But the Rams look 3-4. I think they're doing great jobs. The Rams. I think they're doing a great job. The Rams. I really do. But getting some players back, maybe a team to watch down the backstretch. The Rams. Ravens, they lost 29-24 to the Browns. That's a game we'll come back and talk about. The Lions, 52-14. They are on fire. Yes, they played the Titans. Yes, it was at home in Detroit. But man, oh man, do they look dangerous. And they are making it look so easy at the moment. 23-20, the Houston Texans over the Colts. Some terrible news coming out of the Texans with Stephon Diggs out for the season. He's done his ACL. Terrible news. It could be, you might have to put a red line through him. It's that significant. It really is. They're at 6-2. They're going to make the playoffs, but they're going to need every bit of luck to get there, and they're going to need their roster. And Stephon Diggs going out, that's a huge loss. Green Bay Packers, second week in a row, a field goal's got them home, 30 points to 27 against the Jags. Green Bay, neither here nor there at the moment. But the Jags, 2-6, they played okay. Trevor Lawrence had some really good moments in the game. 28-27, this was a good game. The Cardinals beat the Dolphins. It's great to see Tua back, a quarterback for the Dolphins. It wasn't enough for them to get the win, but it's good to see him back. And obviously, he comes back into the team. They get straight back to 27 points. I think that attack could click soon, and let's hope that the Dolphins can look at 2-5. The chances are that they're not going to do anything this year, but they might be a real thorn in the side of a lot of teams in the backstretch of the year. 25-22, the Patriots. Big upset over the Jets. Aaron Rodgers, I said this a few weeks ago. What are your excuses now, mate? You got your boy back. You got your boy. You got rid of the coach. What's going on? 25-20. Now you can't even beat the Patriots. Okay, sure, it was in New England, but 2-6, and you can't beat Jacoby Brissett? Really? Aaron, stop making excuses, mate. I think that you got to look at yourself and decide whether you want to continue playing this game at the moment, mate. I'm telling you, very disappointing performance. Falcons 31-26 over the Bucks. That's a pretty good win by the Falcons. They were disappointing last week against the Seahawks, but they've returned serve. They've gone to Tampa, and they've got the job done. I thought Tampa would win that game. That's a bit of a disappointing result for Tampa. They're now sitting at 4-4. Falcons are 5-3, going pretty good. The Eagles. Okay. Are the Eagles starting to warm up? Do we have a new contender for the title? The Eagles might be warming up. They were sensational, beating the Bengals in Cincinnati. Bengals are 3-5. I made a prediction how good they were going a few weeks ago, that they had to go on a run. They're starting to lose touch. And with Pittsburgh getting another win, this is getting very dangerous for the Bengals. They might not qualify for the playoffs. Joe Burrow, what are you thinking right now? The Eagles, 37-17 in Cincinnati. That is an incredible result. Their defense is looking out of this world. It really is. They're making some good plays with the ball. Jalen Hurts had his best game I've seen him play pretty much since the Super Bowl. But 37-17, that's dominant. Keep an eye on the Eagles. You know, there was talk about them before the year. I thought they were sort of fluffing around the season. I wasn't convinced, but now I've got to say I've changed my tune. They're a contender now. They're 5-2. Washington will be looking over their shoulder. We're going to talk about that game in a second. But Eagles, well done. 26-8 charges over the Saints. Saints, they're gone. Just put a line through them. They started the year okay. They were good in defeat against the Chiefs. They're done. Saints, forget it. 26-8, though, not a bad win for the Chargers. Again, not a bad team. You come up against them. If you're not good, they're going to beat you. If you're too good, you're going to beat them. Bills, 31-10 over the Seahawks at the Hawks' Nest. The Bills, another contender. They look smick. This was a 31-3 ball game. You don't go to Seattle and put that kind of a beatdown on them easily. They are looking really good, the Bills. Josh Allen was sensational again. If you didn't watch this game, you missed out. 18-15. The Commanders have beaten the Bears. Look, it's a bizarre game because it was one of the, if you like an old school game, if you like a defensive game, well, you got it. Did you anticipate a defensive game with Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams as the quarterbacks? No. I didn't see this game coming. I didn't see it unfolding as it did. A bizarre game, defensively really good. It was a tough game. Bears are a good team. They're good. The Commanders, they're excellent. But if you haven't seen the film, I almost don't even want to say it. If you haven't seen it, just YouTube the highlights. Well, but I'm doing a podcast. I've got to say it. This was an unbelievable ending. Unbelievable ending. 50. The Bears had it. No time on the clock. Jaden Daniels, gets the snap. He's moving around the pocket. It's a Hail Mary play. And he's got to throw it about 65, 70 yards. It's a Hail Mary play. He's got no choice. No time on the clock. This was going to be the last throw. The Bears have stacked the end zone. All they have to do is just get rid of the ball. So Jaden Daniels launches it. But the Bears, they don't try to catch it. They go to deflect the ball, and they deflect it straight into the hands of Brown, who was waiting in the end zone. Touchdown. Game. I've never seen it before. I've never seen anything like it. I've seen those kind of plays come off, but not when the Bears get to the ball and they deflect it into the hands of Brown playing for the Commanders. And they win it 18-15. Incredible game. Again, didn't unfold the way it should. What do you make of Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels? I think they're both playing really, really well. I think they're a credit to their franchises. I'm a fan of both of them. But Jaden Daniels at the moment has got the wood over Caleb Williams. They're 6-2, the Commanders. They're flying in that division. It's a real gut check for the Dallas Cowboys because they're going to have a hell of a time trying to get to the playoffs now. But Commanders 6-2, but now they've got to be concerned about the Eagles. The Eagles are coming fast. But I'm pretty safe that the Commanders and the Eagles are the two that are going to qualify for the playoffs coming out of that division. And that is a gut check play. The Cowboys, for them to have any chance of the playoffs, that Hail Mary could not be successful for the Commanders. It had to be battered down from the Bears, and it would have been a good win for the Bears. But nevertheless, it hasn't worked out that way. 15-12 at the time. It's finished 18-15. They didn't even go for the extra point. It was there's no point. There's no point going for the extra point. The game was over. Broncos 28 over the Panthers 14. Chiefs 27-20 over the Raiders. I predicted this game last week wouldn't be a blowout. I said there'd be at least a touchdown in it. It's exactly what happened. 27-20. This game's always tight. You can throw the form guide out the window. The Raiders and the Chiefs are always a tight game. The Chiefs, to be honest, they didn't even play that well. But what I love about the Chiefs is every single week they're putting in a lot more schemes, a lot more routes. They're doing so many different plays. And this is what they've done. They've built their dynasty based on the fact that they don't want to just win every game the way they want. They want to win every game by trying everything in their playbook, everything in their repertoire. They want to run all their routes. And as a result, they're not looking that great. They pull off plays. They have a lot of field goals. They get into red zone. They're not converting. But they're 7-0. They're 7-0, and they're basically using the opposition as pawns to see what works and what doesn't. We know one thing about the Chiefs. If you're going to look at this result and you're going to go, are they really the title favourites? They've won 7-0. They're going for 3 in a row. I don't know if I like what I see. They don't care. They don't care. That's how they were last year. That's how they were the year before. They don't put emphasis on being the best version of themselves throughout the regular season. They need to win. You need to acquire enough wins to get there. They look at their map and they go, we need 11 games to get to the postseason. That's it. Win 11 games, we're there. But what we want to do is to ensure that we've practiced everything in our repertoire. Everything Spagnuolo wants to do in defense. Everything Andy Reid wants to do in offense. What's his name? Travis Kelce is getting more involved now. But there are other tight ends that are having a lot of say what happens on the field. They got DeAndre Hopkins. He made some nice plays. You've got Xavier Worthy, right? So DeAndre Hopkins, he'll replace Rashid Rice for the rest of the year. Xavier Worthy, he's getting a lot more reps now. They're just fine-tuning their craft. When they get to the playoffs, they're going to be ready to go. They're 7-0. At the moment, it looks like they're going to have home field advantage through the entire playoffs. And if they get to the AFC Championship, they're going to host it at Arrowhead. Very hard seeing anyone knocking over the Chiefs. Chiefs are doing a wonderful job at the moment, but this was a close game, 27-20. That's how I anticipated it. San Francisco Cowboys. This wasn't a bad game. It wasn't a bad game. I've been very critical of the Dallas Cowboys last few weeks. They were pretty good. But there was a period there where they conceded 21 straight points as well. They probably should have won this game. They've ended up losing at 30 points to 24. It was 10-6, and they let 21 consecutive points in just the third quarter. They conceded three touchdowns in just the third quarter. That is absolutely disgusting. It's not good enough. They were okay for 3 quarters. The first quarter they were good. Second quarter they were good, and third quarter, you know what? They were okay. They kept coming at the 49ers. They were doing all right. But you can't concede 3 touchdowns in 1 quarter. That third quarter was a disaster. And that sort of sums up the Cowboys. Even when they're going good, they will go through a patch and you think, what on earth are you doing? Dak Prescott, he played okay. It was better than where he's been. He still threw an interception. It was a poor one. But he threw some good throws at the end to get him some touchdowns. I'll give him that. But look, at the end of the day, 30 points to 24. What it doesn't change is that the Cowboys are now 3-4. The Commanders are 6-2, and the Eagles are 5-2. And the form those two teams are in, 3-4, I can't see the Cowboys getting to the playoffs. Am I ready to put a red line through the Cowboys? That's insane. After 8 weeks to say you're going to put a line through the Cowboys, I don't want to do that. But I don't think they're going good enough at the moment. And I just think the lack of recruitment and the poor retention policies in the offseason are really starting to hurt now. The Cowboys, they made a game of it. The last few times they've gone to Levi Stadium, they've been absolutely wiped off the field. So a little bit of a positive spin there for the Cowboys, but their season could be over. I don't know whether they can make some moves anymore, but it could be over for the Cowboys. 4-4 for the 49ers. Look, with the Seahawks going down, they're looking good in that division now. So 49ers, they're back in contention. They're probably the favourites to now win their division at 4-4. So that's neither here nor there. Cowboys, work to do. Steelers, fantastic. Look, they're 26-18. They're 6-2, the Steelers now, with the Bengals dropping another game, and with the Ravens dropping a game to the Browns. Steelers back on top of the division. I think they're looking good for the playoffs now. I think they've done enough. 6-2. I can't see the Bengals turning 3 wins around with only 9 weeks to go. I can't see it. So I think the Steelers might be in, to be honest with you. Look, there were some parts about the game that were a bit frustrating. This wasn't the most entertaining game in the world. It took a long time to get a touchdown. It was just field goals, just Boswell kicking goals. But holding penalties are still killing the Steelers, but they also came up with some big plays. And Russell Wilson, in the last 2 weeks, he's come into the team, and the most noticeable factor is the involvement of George Pickens. George Pickens' involvement, I think he's the best wide receiver in the game. I just don't think he gets involved enough. But he wasn't getting involved as much with Justin Fields. Russell Wilson has made a decision to throw him the ball, even in heavy traffic. It's contested possession. It's not guaranteed, but Pickens, even when he's got double coverage, even triple coverage, Russell Wilson is just throwing him the ball. He's just going up and just taking it. He's just picking it out from everywhere. Good name, Pickens, because that's exactly what he's doing. He's a fantastic player. The Steelers have a legitimate wide receiver. For the first time probably since Antonio Brown, a legitimate wide receiver. He's tall, he's lanky, he's fast, his footwork's incredible, his hand-eye coordination is just elite. I love what I see from George Pickens. And if Russell Wilson stays fit, they're throwing the ball a lot more with Russell Wilson. He's not using his feet anywhere near as much. Justin Fields' strength is his legs. I was critical of the offensive side of the ball because Justin Fields is running too much, but maybe it was designed for the fact that if Justin Fields is playing, we have to get him to use his legs. But Russell Wilson, he's got complete control over the team at the moment. He's throwing the ball downfield. It's not just Pickens. There are other receivers that are making some big plays. Frymouth is having an excellent season. But Najee Harris and Warren, this two-pronged attack they've got at the running backs, they are really causing problems. And the beauty about Pittsburgh is the one thing they can count on is that ridiculous defensive line they've got. Ridiculous defense. And their defensive line continues to make big plays. They continue to come up with fumbles and interceptions at the right time. Beanie Bishop, rookie out of, I don't know where we got him from, but we got him in the draft. We put him in the secondary. He's come up with 3 interceptions in 2 weeks. 3 interceptions in 2 weeks, and 2 of them were really, really tough. Really good player. Very good player. Special teams are making huge plays for the Steelers. Running backs, two-pronged attack with Harris and Warren. Beanie Bishop in the secondary. You've got TJ Watt and Hayward up front. And now you've got Pickens picking them off from anywhere. And then you've got the experience of Russell Wilson. Can Steelers win a Super Bowl with Russell Wilson? Hit me up at mike@globalsportfanatics.com or any of my socials. If you think I'm mad or I'm just being too passionate as a Steelers fan, it's probably a bit of both. But I like what I see. Look, I'm not going to say they're going to win the Super Bowl. They're going to have to get through the Chiefs, and I don't think the defense is going to get the Chiefs' offense off the field enough for them to win a Super Bowl or to win an AFC championship. But the Steelers, they're 6-2. They're leading their division. If you asked me before the season, after 8 weeks, if Steelers were leading the division, what would you be thinking? I'd be thinking, well, Russell Wilson must be killing it. He's only played 2 games, but he's been fantastic. And they've got the fabric of the side where they need to get to. They've obviously worked on their running game. They've got George Pickens more involved. Frymouth is being excellent. And their secondary hasn't been great the last few years, but with Beanie Bishop now doing what he's doing at the corner, they're doing some wonderful things. So well done to the Steelers. That's my wrap on the NFL, and that's my episode for this week, guys. So please hit me up at mike@globalsportfanatics.com if you have any questions or any of my socials. I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you to Pat and Anonymous for finally getting back to me with some inquiries and allowing me to answer some inquiries. That's fantastic. That's what I want to base this platform on. See you next week.
On the neon glare